These posters are linked in the video description if you would like to have them. I have them in a smaller PDF format so you could use them. Also, you will find a Google Doc of my favorite tools and materials that I use and links to my Amazon influencer storefront. Hello there. So this video is designed for my students and other people who might be struggling with centering. I have some tips and tricks that I want to show you, and really the big thing also is I want to show you how to recenter the wall if you have thrown it off. Now, in the video description you will find a link to a poster. The poster that I have there, the first one is showing how centering works, where the hand pressure should be, and the second one shows about recentering the clay. So when you are looking at when you're done with the video, feel free to go to the video description. I have it in a small size on a PDF, so you can download that and print it out if you would like. Now, I am just starting with a small hunk of clay. It's about 1.25 pounds, and I'm starting with this size because this is the size that my students are using when we first begin at in the high school. So I have 3 different levels of classes: ceramics 1, 2, and 3, and level 3 is all about wheel throwing. Now, when they have been centering for the past week, but inevitably beginners have some struggles. So I want to just review some of the big tips to help. So after I have it sealed and kind of padded to the back, I'm using my left hand, and I'm using the heel of my left hand and the side of my left hand down against the bat. And I do hook my thumb over the top. So that's doing a lot of the preliminary centering. Now, my students sometimes struggle with the centering, so I tell them try coning. Now, coning is when you take your other hand, so I'm taking my right hand directly opposite from the left. The force from both of the hands is going dead center into the middle of the clay, okay? And then the coning part, you really want to make sure that you have centered the base down there, okay? You don't want it to come up too far because you still need to have some downward pressure so you don't pull your clay off, okay? And always, whenever you cone, try to keep the clay domed. I usually try to do the coning before the hockey puck type centering, before I have a flat top. Now, after you've coned, you've really done most of the centering, then we're going to make it into the hockey puck. Okay, now this is where some of my kids sometimes have troubles, and this might sound familiar. I don't really have it on this one, but sometimes some of my kids get diagonal stress marks along the clay. That's a sure indicator that you need a bit more side hand pressure. But here's the important thing. Whenever you put your pressure on your clay, okay, you have side hand and top hand. So the left, I'm right-handed, so my left is the side, right is the top. My hands have to be locked together, okay? My elbows have to be locked. I'm making a really firm triangle, okay? So you have 3 points of the triangle that are really, really firm, okay? When you are putting your pressure down, if you have a wobble in the side, use greater pressure with the side hand. If you have a wobble in the top, use greater pressure with the top hand. But here's the thing that you can't forget. When you are pressing with the side, okay, you can't take your top hand off. You have to leave your top hand on there, and vice versa. When you're pushing with the top, you can't take your side hand off, because any off-centeredness would go to the place where you're not pushing. So that's why you have to push from both. And if you look at the poster that I'm going to include, it shows how when you have side pressure and downward pressure, it actually does create upward pressure because you're pressing against the bat, so you have pressure from all 3 sides, top, side, bottom, okay? So you want to get it so it's not wobbly prior to dropping the middle. Okay? When you do drop the middle, there are many different ways people can drop middles. I like to show my beginners this way because I find that they have an easier time. I leave my left hand on the side, I take my left thumb and let it naturally find that center point as it's spinning, and then I'm going to take and push it in until I have roughly 1/2 inch left at the bottom of the hole that I just dropped. Now, you can check to see how thick it is. Put your needle tool in there, run your finger along the needle tool until it just touches the clay. Take your finger out, and from the very, very tip of your finger to the tip of the needle tool, that's how much you have. And I do have 1/2 inch there. And that takes, you know, it takes beginners a while sometimes. Now, when you go to open this, for my students, we are doing cylinders at first. So for the cylinders, we are going to leave a flat bottom with a 90-degree corner on the inside. And again, this is illustrated on the poster that I have. Okay, so in order to open this to a flat bottom, you can take whatever you're most comfortable with, both thumbs, fingers, whatever works for you, but notice how I keep my left hand on the side. The left hand is there so I don't inadvertently change the outside of the wall. You still want the outside of the wall to be straight up and down. Now, I might have an irregularity in the bottom, so I can take my sponge and take care of the irregularity. Your bottom should be flat, so if you have a belly button, or you have like a little mountain shape, or you have lines, you can just compress that over with your sponge. Now, I happen to be centered, but as a beginner, a lot of my students, when they open it up, it looks kind of wonky. So I'm just going to make this a little wonky. All right, so let's say I have a wonky opened piece of clay. This is the crisis. Now, there are ways that you can fix this, and this is the important thing that I want to share. So, if any of you have ever heard of Robin Hopper, he was a very famous potter, great teacher, who had a method, he referred to it as the claw, which I'll show you on a bigger piece. It's good for a big piece. On this, I refer to it as the duckbill, okay? And what we are going to do, and again, this will be linked in the poster, we are going to be squeezing, so the left hand, the inside fingers will be, the fingers will be on the inside of the wall, the thumb will be on the outside of the wall, the right hand is going to be locked to it, and I'm going to be pushing down with the right hand. So I squeeze side to side with the left hand, push down with the right hand. My elbows are locked, my hands are locked together. So if you can see this, I'm creating a channel through which the clay has to pass, and my hands are locked. My hands aren't wobbly all around. When your hands are locked, you can recenter a wall that is not centered. Okay, so I'm going to stop this and cut it just so I can illustrate that in cross section. And again, you will find this on the poster. So the way that I just did it, my hands were really basically, if this were a clock face, my hands were at 6 o'clock, maybe 5 o'clock. But my left hand was squeezing side to side, so fingers on the inside, thumb on the outside, pushing down with the right hand and the sponge. Okay, so let's go to a slightly bigger piece of clay, and we're going to do the same thing. I did not weigh this piece of clay, but I'm estimating it's probably, I don't know, 3.5 pounds, something like that. Okay, so again, I want to just get it rough centered. I probably should have cleaned away a little bit of that slip right there at the edge before I put that down, but I just wanted to make sure the slip wasn't under it, but it was pretty close to the edge. There we go. Okay. Rough center. I'm going to center it in the same manner. My left hand is using the heel of the hand, the side of the hand, and from the get-go, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do coning on this before I've even addressed the top. Okay, but again, I'm keeping it domed on the top, and then I can squish it down. So coning, again, coning should be your best friend. If you have trouble centering, you could be coning. Your elbows have to be down. we're going to just push that down, leaving it domed, and I'm going to do that again. So where I had kind of a corner there, I just kind of pushed it down to keep it domed. All right. Now, I will say that I don't usually normally cone my stuff unless I'm having issue or it's really big. So students, if you're struggling with centering, I would just encourage you to try coning it. Now, because this hunk of clay is a little bit bigger, I am lifting my right elbow. And the reason I'm doing that is because I have some shoulder issues. So I try to alter my angle of my arm sometimes to help reduce the pain. Now, if I can show you this down here at the bottom, you can see there's some like little lines, little diagonal lines that has not been compressed enough yet. It is not fully centered. This clay it's got a little bit of a wobble in the top, and I should keep pushing. I should center it more, but I'm not going to because I want to show you how I can remedy the off-centered clay. So again, I'm going to push my left thumb in. I'm going to open it up, keeping my left hand on the side of the wall so I don't change it. Okay, and this wall is fairly centered, but it still has a little issue down here, and it feels a little wonky. I'm just going to throw it off a little bit more. Okay, so I have a flat bottom and a wall that is not fully centered, and the wall must be centered before I start pulling. If I start pulling when it's a little bit thrown off, it's going to be a problem. So this is where Robin Hopper's term comes in. When I referred to it as the duckbill with the small piece of clay, he refers to it as the claw. So his technique is really the same. He's just using more of the hand. So the thumb is on the outside, fingertips are on the inside, and then the right hand is up on top. Your hands are locked together. Your elbows are down. So we still want the wall to be coming up from the bat at about a 90-degree angle. And I still wanted an interior that had pretty close to 90-degree angle in order to make any type of a cylinder like a vase and stuff. Oh, and always remember, the diameter that you make your opening determines the diameter of the whole overall form. So if you wanted to make a vase this wide, you would not open a tiny little bottom like that. You would end up with horribly thick walls. Now, let's stop this again. Okay. So because this clay was thicker, I wanted to show you the hand position. And I did leave my base extra thick on that, which I didn't need to. So for this one, I had the whole hand was wrapped around it, so my fingers and my thumb were on the outside, and then the right hand was pushing down like so. Okay. And then lastly, I want to do one more, which is more of a bowl form. Because my students start with cylinders, they are making, everything has a flat bottom right now. But on the chart that is linked, or the little poster type thing that's linked, I do show what the interior of a bowl should look like. So I just wanted to show that real quick on here. When you're coning, you want to focus on centering the base of the wall. If you don't center the base, it's not going to really be an effective cone. And then I keep this as a dome, So I push down on the corner to create a dome. You want to be careful. You don't want to have you don't want like a dip or an indent in there. So that's why I push on the corner to keep it domed. There we go. And now I'm ready to center. And again, if you're seeing little diagonal stress marks down there, you want to use greater pressure with the side hand. Now, I am going to show you an alternative method of opening, and because this is a bowl, I'm going to have a rounded interior. So I'm using the heel of my hand to push in. I use this a lot when I make very large bowls, just to keep it from stressing my fingers too much. Now, one thing that I wanted to also mention, a kind of a troubleshooting thing, is when my kids open up the clay, sometimes they get like this funny little ridge here. You always want to try to keep your thumb or your fingers kind of wrapped on that edge so you don't get a funny little ridge. All right. So to recenter this wall, here I'm going to throw it off. All right. So to recenter this wall, I'm going to use the same method, the claw. So my fingers on the inside, thumb on the outside, pressure point on the top. You have to have all pressure points. Again, you have to have every side has to be covered. Inside, outside, top. Once you have it recentered, then you'll be ready to pull. I tell kids when they're recentering, try not to thin the wall when you're recentering. It should still be a short, stubby wall. Okay. And with the interior rounded, the wall is centered, I'm ready to pull. Now, after every pull, kind of stop and recenter the wall. This is another helpful hint for kids. As you pull, you get to the top of the wall, gently stabilize, and recenter. So you're doing a miniature duckbill. Okay? It's one of the most helpful tips, I would say, for a beginner to keep your wall centered. If everything is looking good and you throw it off while you're pulling, recenter it. I'm going to do that again. Recenter it. I'm going to take, I had a little excess clay down there at the base. I'm going to trim away some of that. And that's all recyclable. For my students, we'll put any stuff like that in the pug mill. If I were at home, I would be putting it out on a plaster bat and getting it to dry a little bit before I wedge it up. Going to use a rib. And there we go. I do hope that this helped understand a little bit more about how you can recenter. Again, you want to make sure that you have your thumb on the outside, fingertips on the inside, right hand pushing down if you need to recenter it, and it should bring it back into alignment.